Welcome back. Time for part two of tonight's debate. We're discussing the growing Libyan chaos, even as the UN Security Council meets to discuss it. Libya has now withdrawn its request for a UN mandate for an internationally backed intervention in the country. However, Italy is requesting action, as are Arab states who want to see an end to the ban on weapons sales to the Libyan government in order to help it take on the Islamic State organization. That's what we've been discussing tonight with my guests. They include William Jordan, former U.S. State Department official, Dominique TRINQUAND, former head of French military missions and an expert on United Nations peacekeeping. Here in the studio, equally is Mohamed El-Alfy, a political analyst. We're also joined this evening from Tobruk by a journalist there, Mohamed El-Jarh. We were mentioning a moment ago the question, the necessity, Dominique TRINQUAND, of the rival political, the rival governments and the rival militias behind them sitting down around a table and speaking in order that Libya can be reunited behind a legitimate government that has the approval of the people and with which the international community can then work. So far, though, talking seems to have gone away entirely.
Yes, because for the four last years, in fact, the militia were staying with their weapons, establishing their power where they were, and funny enough, they were all paid by the Libyan government. All the militia were paid by the government. And so, in fact, all this militia used for 4 years to establish their power not by the vote, but with the weapons. And so the first step is exactly, when I visited Libya, I was surprised. I visited the Navy, the Air Force, but then never the Army, because the Army were not ready. The Army were tribes. And you have a brigade from this tribe, another one from this tribe. So the first step is really to disarm the people in order to establish a proper army or a proper police. But after 2 years of fighting, it will be very difficult.
Given the fighting that's gone on, given also the strength of the militia that backs the rival government currently in Tripoli, Libya, Dawn, it's difficult to imagine, Mohamed El-Jarh, either that the internationally recognised government in Tobruk would want to speak to them, or indeed that it could do so effectively. The problem is the weapons and the strength of the militia involved.
This goes back to the point that some of your guests were making. The international community intervened in Libya in 2011. They did not have, after the overthrow of Gaddafi, France, the UK and the United States did not have a post-revolution or post-intervention plan. And as a result, the militias mushroomed and the Libyan state was yet to be created. So they became much more powerful than the state. They became much more powerful than the political process and the democratic process in Libya. It's important again to understand that because the 2011 did not work, or the 2011 intervention did not work, it didn't work because there was no post-intervention plan. What needs to happen, I believe now, is that an intervention must happen in Libya, because the Libyan problem is no longer just Libyan. It is a regional problem, and it is an international problem that will require a regional solution and an international solution as well as a Libyan one. But this time, the intervention must make sure that Libya's borders are secured and the arms flow is secured. The flow of jihadists and foreign fighters is controlled as well. These things did not happen after the overthrow of Gaddafi. And these things are partly to blame for the chaos and the spread of jihadists and militias and the scattered weapons throughout the country.
The problem, William Jordan, is that the international community simply doesn't have the appetite or the means to get involved in Libya at this particular stage. You mentioned the number of other fronts it's involved on. It seems very unlikely that the international community will get too heavily involved in Libya.
Well, I don't think so in terms of a military intervention. I mean, I think that's completely off the table. I don't see, even in a limited sense, and I don't propose to do it right now, but I mean, I think we need to address this head-on, this issue of whether or not the rise of this Islamic State faction within Libya and the tragic killing of these 21 Egyptian Copts constitutes somehow a game changer, so that everything is now thrown off the table that we'd been working on in Libya before, and now we need to focus entirely on that. But as far as what you're saying, I mean, I don't think there's not just an appetite, but I also think that there's a determination that the only way forward in Libya is on the basis of some kind of a reasonable political settlement reached by Libyans, not something that's forced on them, not something that you're still going to have some faction hold up in a significant part of the country contesting, with the weapons and the militiamen to be able to back it up. And this is where, I keep coming back to the point I made before. As has been the case throughout since 2011, there has been a UN-led process to try to help Libya along. It has now become a mediation process. It is still working. It has not reached a successful point where you've been able to get, or where the UN Special Envoy has been able to get all of the factions together. But there have been meetings. There is a process in play. It is ultimately, even though there may be technically a legally recognized government, until the UN-led process plays out and the special negotiator concludes that, okay, there's this one group based in Tobruk that we've been able to work with. They're all very agreeable. It's this other group that is completely resistant and intransigent, and that therefore, we must call things as they are. There's going to be no possibility of a resolution with this group. Then, go to the Security Council and make a decision. Okay, then we are going to put all of our eggs in the basket of the Tobruk government, and provide the necessary assistance and allow states to intervene internationally as needed. Only then are you going to change the way things are playing out now. Right now it is a slow political process, a painfully slow political process. But as the General was just saying before, General TRINQUAND was saying before, we have a fundamental problem, first of all, which is that these heavily armed militias have not been disarmed and refuse to be disarmed, and that is what is blocking any meaningful political process.
On that question, Mohamed El-Alfy, of the extent to which the Islamic State group is a game changer, certainly in terms of the international community, the attention being paid by the international community, it seems to have changed things. The UN Security Council is to meet to discuss the issue. It might have also changed the dynamics inside Libya. You could imagine a scenario where the growing presence and threat posed by the Islamic State group might focus the minds and group the rival factions together. In fact, that hasn't happened. It seems only to have further divided the groups that are in control of both halves of the country.
Yeah. Let me say, frankly, now we are not in front of jihadist groups working separately from the international intelligence agencies. We are facing in MENA region a project made by United States of America and the U.S. Intelligence Agency to create what's so-called the political Islam, to roll the countries by force in Tunisia, in Libya,
so you're suggesting that the United States are behind Libya Dawn?
Yes, behind the chaos, and also try to support those people inside Egypt. Why U.S. administration always supports the extremists? Now the U.S. administration calls everywhere White House and the Foreign Affairs. We are calling for democracy, for human rights. How it come? While you are supporting at the same time in two channels at the same time calls for democracy, for human rights, and support these extreme groups.
But
now,
what proof do you have of American support for the extremist groups?
Now we have 6 persons from MB, Muslims Brotherhood, members in Obama administration. Now he's supporting the extremists. Now the U.S. administration refused to recognize that Muslims Brotherhood is an extreme group. Now he's saving the logistic support for those people. Now he's forcing other countries to give them official accommodations and to open the international media for them. We will return back to the situation in Libya. Now, directly, this MENA region is not your land, Barack Obama. The MENA region we will destroy your project, Barack Obama, in this MENA region. Cooperate or you will regret directly.
I'd like to go back to Tobruk and bring you in. Mohamed El-Alfy, what is the view from Tobruk about the Islamic State organization and what's been going on as they've grown their presence beyond Derna and onto Sirte? They seem, the internationally backed government in Tobruk, to have moved ever closer to the Egyptian president.
Absolutely. As long as the international community keeps looking the other way and starts to take this reluctant position to address the very serious issue of Islamic State in Libya, the Libyan government, or the internationally recognized government, will be looking for other options, and this will be Egypt in this case. And I believe that Egypt, after the beheading of 21 Coptic Egyptians in Sirte, will be working to support the internationally recognized government in Tobruk more fully and not in a secretive way, as has been the case for many months now. President Assisi was on the Libyan border today, and he met with tribes. So he is trying to build a strategy of trying to win over local actors as well in the fight against Islamic State. It is something that the international community should be doing, but because the international community is not interested in doing anything, regional players are now going ahead and they are doing the job. We have seen the airstrikes on Derna a couple of days ago, and they will not be the last. There is even greater coordination between General Khalifa Haftar, for example, and the Egyptian military in order to have a strategy to counter the rise of Islamic State, not just in Derna, but throughout Libya.
Indeed, it's been interesting to watch. Dominique TRINQUAND, we heard Al-Sisi once again say today that Egypt would continue to carry out strikes if its security were in danger. Simplifying a little bit, similar lines seem to have been drawn in Libya than those that were drawn in Egypt, with on one hand the government in Tobruk and the general just mentioned presenting themselves as sort of military type strongmen fighting against even the moderate Islamists trying to stay in power or return to power in Libya. You can see why a natural alliance should be formed.
Yes, certainly. But I think that 4 years ago we were a bit naive, thinking that after a revolution with election everything will be clear and there will be a state like we've got in Europe. That was not the case. For 2 years we have the chaos with tribes everywhere. Now we've got something which is split the country by two, roughly. And now is coming the time to make choice and to say, okay, if we want a united or a federation in Libya, then we need to apply force on this part and to help this part. And so politics, it's about choice. I mean, you need to have discussion between both, but if it's impossible to have a unique solution with the two parties, then you need to make choice, because without that, it will last long. And I think that the arrival of Daesh in Libya is something which will focus. Everybody will look at that because of the arrival of Daesh, because Daesh is the threat everywhere. So then people will look at that. And Egypt is looking at that rightly after the action 2 days ago. France in the south is always saying that we need to do something in Libya. And now Italy is on board saying we need something because they are just on our border.
Well, indeed, and Italy that was actually directly threatened in that video that was posted over the weekend in the wake of the killing of the Coptic Christians. Of course, the members of the Islamic State organization speaking to the camera vowed to conquer Rome, indeed. Here is what Italy's foreign minister had to tell the Italian parliament today about the threat now posed to Europe by Libya.
The
deterioration of the situation on the ground forces, I emphasize, forces a change in the pace by the international community before it's too late. The
actual footprint of the Islamic State organization in Libya is under debate, discussion. They're believed to be in control of Sirte as well as Derna now, but by no means are they the most important group in Libya today. And yet they have got the attention of the world because the idea that this caliphate should be claimed so close to Europe's shores is, of course, the greatest threat to European security directly that the group has posed so far.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, I'm not going to say that the Islamic State, in whatever form, wherever it is, doesn't pose a threat or pose a problem. But the Islamic State is a symptom. It's not the problem, or it's not the main issues that everybody should be focusing on, whether you're talking about Iraq and Syria or you're talking about Libya. I mean, the basic issues in all of these places have to do with decades, in fact, almost a century of misrule in the Arab world, and problems that had piled on top of each other and which came to a festering head in 2011 with the so-called Arab Spring. And exactly as General Trinquand has said, it has been naive to believe that somehow, as I put it, you could short-circuit history and you could bring about democratic change in a region that has not known democratic change or has known very little democratic practice, over the past few decades. So what you have now with Libya is, a dilemma that I agree the countries in the region need to face up to. And, much in the same way the United States has had to deal with the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria after the beheading of American citizens by the Islamic State. Egypt now has decided it needs to step forward in a different way. Great. The Egyptians have some means to be able to intervene directly and to deal with certain aspects of this. Great. They should do so. They should do so within the bounds of international legitimacy and in conjunction with and coordination with local authorities. Fine. That's how in many ways, a lot of these issues should be dealt with. And indeed, it would be better that they were dealt with this way further east in Iraq and Syria. However, I don't think that the world should pivot as far as how it's treating Libya purely on the basis of the Islamic State. And in the end, it is only going to be the Libyans themselves who can come to the decisions and the solution and the settlement that is going to take their country forward for the long term. It is not going to be via an international military intervention.
Now, Mohamed El-Alfy, one of the things that has got the attention of the Italians is the threat from the Islamic State group and its direct threat to the Italians in the latest video. Another thing is something that has been a problem for Italy since the revolution, which are the boatfuls of migrants crossing the water from Libya. Of course, the worsening chaos, the worse the chaos gets in Libya, the greater the number of migrants seeking to make Italian shores.
Here in this point, we have to look to not to the immigration only of the normal people looking for safe life, to have medical care or to have a job. No, now we are looking to the matter of the immigration of terrorists and the tourism groups to Europe. Now, Egypt moved not because, of course, move the action to protect our people, and we have approximately 750,000 still in Egypt, right, in Libya right now, and we advise them to return back, and the Egyptian military is on the borders to save care and to send them houses or homes. Now, the problem is, now Italy come to cooperate with Egypt. We appreciate the Italian and the French cooperation. It was very fast. Why very fast? Not because of the immigration of this tourism or terrorists. Now, today, there is a small paragraph by Al Arabiya channel in Dubai. They announced that there is speeches by some intelligence agencies that some 100 people from Daesh take a boats to go direct to Europe. Via which road? Now we all of us in the same dangerous in the Middle East. Now let me say something. It's a reasonable question. Is those people saying no, Daesh is not supported, is not backed by anyone. Okay, let me ask them, to all people over the world, especially the officials in this crazy world. Now, now we have Daesh in Syria, in Iraq, how they are moving from Afghanistan by fly carpets? Of course, no. This Boko Haram now fighting in 4 countries at the same time. From where did they get support? Who's saving them the logistic support? Who's saving them the media? Who's the owner of this international media to publish the videos? Who's supporting them? Now, if there is no intelligence agencies for superpowers in this world, of course, they must respect our brains. They must respect our humanity. They must respect our rights to live in peace. In MENA region.
On the question, General Trinquand, of what was announced by Daesh, in a sense, in the latest video, when they say we will come to Italy on migrant ships, they could not be making the threat, sounding the alarm bells in Europe more clearly than they did in that video, saying we will conquer Rome. The fact is that were the international community to get involved in a military intervention to back what had been Egypt's request and take them on, this would play actually entirely into their hands, which is probably why they're goading the West to do it.
Yes, certainly, because we must remember that the threat in our country, I'm talking about Europe, it's not coming from immigrants coming in our country. They are French or Italian citizens who are terrorists, and they are terrorists because they are linked with the ideology of Daesh, and that's where they are, and because it's easy to identify immigrants. It's less easy to identify a French citizen with a weapon. So I think that they are playing very well with the media. They are trying to show that they need an operation. They are in another world. I mean, the people from the Islamic State are in another world. They want to be martyr for Islam, and so they want. Being killed is not a problem. So they want to show that we are weak and we are not able to fight against that. So it's really the sort of combat where we are currently. And showing that just on the seaside is a way, I mean, with a picture, to show that, and everybody is looking at that. But the fight has been in Libya for 2 years, not in the last 2 weeks.
William Jordan, finally. The real test then will be the international community's ability, rather than going in all guns blazing, actually to get in there more subtly, help the rival parties find a political solution in that some sort of stability, and so that some sort of stability can be returned and the threat can be seen off from within the country.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that why is Libya important to the West? I mean, and I'm going to put it in terms of why is Libya important to the West. It's important to the West because of oil. And we've already seen how the situation in Libya has disrupted oil markets. It's important to the West because of the immigration issue, the illegal immigration issue, and it's also important because of the security issue throughout the region of northwestern Africa. I mean, as the General has pointed out, there's great concern still about the weapons unleashed by the overthrow of Gaddafi throughout, especially the Sahel region. But we're also seeing that this is providing the fuel within Libya for both the continued intractable political standoff among militias, as well as the armament of groups like the Islamic State.
Well, we're going to take a quick break now to find out what's been going on over at Media Watch. Welcome back. It's time now for Media Watch. James Creedon is here to give us a look at what's being said on social media this evening. Of course, lots of attention tonight, James, on Ukraine, the fall of Debaltseve.
That's right. Lots of images appearing on social media, Melissa. I'll just start with this one here, taken by photographer and put up on social media. You can see Pierre Com is his name, and he's actually protected that image, but it shows missiles being fired and pro-Russian rebels apparently having fired those Grad rockets towards the town in question. So there you go. That's some of the images that are appearing on social media. I'll show you some headlines as well in the French media. Le Monde, in Ukraine, the sound of weapons despite the truce, thank you, and indeed, of course, the truce seems like a distant memory at this stage, Melissa. Also in the Courrier International, an ironic detail: the month of February, which actually means ferocious month in the Ukrainian language, and certainly that's very true this year. Now, moving on to BuzzFeed.com, a photographer working for them, Max Avdiv, he embedded with rebel fighters in Logvinova, which is near the town of Debaltseve, and in the days leading up to the fall of Debaltseve, he took some pretty incredible images with the soldiers that he was embedded with. Now, a lot of those images we can't really show them, Melissa, because they're actually quite violent, quite grim, and they show bodies strewn across what is a battlefield, essentially. But they are nonetheless quite extraordinary images, and giving an insight into the fact that really this is, for all intents and purposes, all-out war.
Now we're going to move on to the fuss that's been made. We were talking about it in sports with Mark Thompson about the video that's been released, taken, I believe, by an English expatriate here in Paris, right, of the racist violence on the tube yesterday here in the French capital after that Chelsea football match. That's
right. Now, you may have already seen the image, Melissa, but I'll just play a little bit of it again here. This is on The Guardian's website. Paul Nolan was the name of the journalist in question. Now, he was travelling home from work, and he came across this scene where Chelsea supporters at the Richelieu Drouot metro station pushed a black gentleman off the train. You can see the incident taking place here, and then started shouting racist slogans. And indeed, other passengers left the train in the aftermath of that because it was such an awful atmosphere. Now, it has led to a huge amount of comments in French media and in British media about the incident. Indeed, the journalist also spoke to France 24 and said he was just so shocked by the scene that he felt he had to film it. Speaking to The Guardian, he said that if he'd seen such scenes in London or Manchester, he might actually have been less surprised, in, I suppose, a reference to football hooliganism as a general issue. But it's really sparked a huge amount of conversation in the British media. The Daily Mirror has even put together a live blog, would you believe, with all of the reactions as they're coming through, including from the Prime Minister David Cameron, who has, of course, said how appalled he was at the incident. So we'll take a look at those reactions in a little bit more detail later on.
James Green, thank you very much indeed. A look there at Media Watch. That brings us to the end of tonight's debate. Thank you very much indeed to all my guests for having been with us tonight. In just a couple of minutes, there'll be time for the latest news.